Hey there, Georgie here with Ukraine Matters. Russia has pulled a lot of resources just so they can show that they are advancing in Ukraine. And we've covered a lot about the fact that the advancements that they've made in Ukraine are relatively low. Plus, we've also heard for months from different experts, analysts, that this tempo of Russian advance cannot be sustained, that at some point they will exhaust themselves. Let us see what the data is showing us, because Russian propagandists are claiming that they're advancing on all fronts and are collapsing Ukrainians and are capturing everything and all of the important positions of Ukrainians. Well, data suggests that no, it wasn't really a fluke that what we saw in the last couple of weeks of December, that Russian tempo is indeed slowing down, and it is now very closely comparable to the mid of 2024 when it was really slow. So Russia still maintains the dominance, so to say, on the front line. And again, we're going to have a separate video about the state of the Ukrainian armed forces, because it's not only about the Russian forces, it's what's the state of the Ukrainian forces that matters as well. But we see that Ukrainian forces kind of, so to say, got their shit together, if you can say so. And they are actually resisting Russians better than they were doing before, and we see that Russian tempo is slowing down. Now, I would still advise us to be careful, and I would still consider that we should give maybe another 2 weeks until mid to mid-late January to fully claim that Russia is going to be in this operational break in which they will need to recoup their resources and completely slow down their activity. Then let's talk about the things that are happening on the front line, and I would really want to use this map, mostly because it's the same as the other maps, except this one also shows the geolocated fortifications of both Russians and Ukrainians, and we're going to talk about the fortification as well, because this is really important. Now, first things first, let's follow up on the Ukrainian offensive. I advised you in the last video that I did about the offensive that while every media source was claiming that this offensive is indeed happening, that Ukrainians are attacking, what it was in the end was just a situational exploitation by the Ukrainian side of Russian rotation. Essentially, Ukrainians just wanted to poke Russia and see whether or not they can capture certain forward elements, capture certain positions from the Russians while they are doing this rotation exercise. Ukrainians were able to breach the territory up and close to Russian positions in Berdyan, but as far as we know, and again, there is little to no data from the Ukrainian side, so we are being conservative here and kind of basing a lot on the Russian data, that it feels that Ukrainians have reached the settlement of Berdyan and Novosotnitsky, but that's about it. It's only kind of problematic if you were expecting some kind of a big offensive from Ukrainians, which I wasn't. I was very low on my estimation scale. So I think it's good. Just a little bit move forward towards the enemy position, cutting down on some of their ability to conduct offensives in this region. It's good. And Russian offensives on the western side of the salient have not been successful as well. So it's basically a blow for blow, so to say. Then we need to talk a little bit about the situation around Terni. So here this map, first and foremost, I want to contest because I do not agree, and from my knowledge and from other sources, that Terni is a captured settlement. It is not. But what is kind of captured and heavily contested right now is the settlement of Ivanivka. This is a crucial settlement here because it allows for control of Terni, so to say. And if Russians will be able to fully establish themselves in Ivanivka, that would definitely create a lot of problems for Ukrainians at this side. So I will be monitoring this direction, and it's definitely a potential threat. As we know that the main important point that Russians want to capture is Liman over here, so they still have ways to go, so to say. Then talking about Chasiv Yar and Toretsk, there is an urban fighting. Russia has supposedly advanced a couple of additional blocks in the city, but again, it's a very big problem for Russia to move through these settlements, and instead we should probably focus and see what Russia is preparing for Pokrovsk and Kurakhove. First and foremost, Kurakhove can fully be accepted that it has been lost by Ukrainian armed forces, that it has been taken by Russians. So despite all of the Russian availability of their resources. They were only now, by the end of the last year, start of this year, finally closed down the pocket, which is incredible because Ukrainians held this pocket for much longer, like almost like 30% longer than any kind of expectations. Then Russia around Pokrovsk is trying to move up as well. Notable settlement that was captured by Russians recently is Shevchenko. This settlement is kind of crucial because it can be a hub for Russian operations towards the western side of Pokrovsk. Now, with this one, there is important thing for us to talk about, specifically fortifications and what Ukrainians can and cannot defend. So Clément Molin here, he follows very closely about what is the defensive lines of Ukrainians and how close Russia is to defensive lines of Pokrovsk. And he made this great thread. I will leave obviously a link to this thread if you want to read in details about what is these lines of defense, what is the defensive positions, and Russia is basically approached something that he calls the Pokrovsk ring and the fourth line of defense that is still holding. You can see where is the big kind of threat for the current situation, and Clément really outlines this because the defensive lines that Russia was approaching, now there's still this defensive line obviously in that area, but Russia is after the breach of Pokrovsk and these defensive lines over here, Russia is now, how would I put it, in a less densely populated area, so to say. So there is a lot of fields. Now, the fact that there is fields doesn't mean that there is no defense or that there is not going to be any defense put up by the Ukrainian armed forces. No, but it's still notable that there are no major Ukrainian fortifications anymore in this area. So some panic spreaders were stating that what Russia actually wants is not to take Pokrovsk, but instead they want to kind of move through towards this defensive line, breach it, and then kind of do a huge push to take in Pavlograd. Now, I want to dismiss this idea right away. It's a complete fantasy because Russia doesn't have the resources. We already established that. What it also seems like that after Russia has captured Kurakhove, the reports are that additional forces, because for us to understand what Russia wants, we need to understand where Russia is putting the forces. So after Russia captured Kurakhove right over here, they actually moved the forces towards eastern side of Pokrovsk. So it's very clear that they want to take the northeastern side of Pokrovsk into the semi-encirclement. Now, this is the same Russian playbook that has been played before. So right now it's going to be up to Ukrainians whether or not they can essentially stop this advancing force of Russians to move further. We will just see and monitor on the Pokrovsk axis specifically what's going to be happening with this salient right over here, because it's going to be critical to decide what's the future of these towns. So far, Russia has not really entered the cities, and I don't think that they really want to fight in the cities. I think they will try to do everything that they can just not to get caught in the urban combat. And I believe Ukrainian armed forces are very well aware of this. Then some additional things that we need to talk about. Firstly, I've talked a little bit about the North Koreans and how they are performing in this war. And it's been shown that so far they have been ill-equipped, but they are learning. Moreover, now they're being mixed up with some of the Russian forces. And apparently they're fixing the part that they didn't have the radios and communications with each other. So right now they already have the radios, reportedly, and they are already trying to figure out how the radios work. But overall, they're still very far behind and they're not a capable fighting force, but they are learning, unfortunately for us. Then there are often narratives about the fact, well, what does Ukraine really do with the vehicles and ammunition that we're sending them? Is this paying off? And welcome to our already regular part of our shows, which is the modern Russian military or modernization of Russian military. This is what our investment in Ukraine does it. The Russian army that was hailed and was ejaculated to by all of the pro-Soviet armaments fanatics. This is the state of their beloved Russian army. It's, I guess this is like a net wagon. Let's call it this, like the Scooby-Doo netted wagon. Then we have the Scooby-Doo rubbered wagon, if you prefer rubber a little bit more. Then continuing with additional modifications of the Russian military. This time we're going cargo, we're going heavy. So it's also rubberized. And I guess this is the new type of anti-ballistic protection that you have on these vehicles to protect from the most modern Ukrainian forces. And it was actually, this model of the protection was so incredibly successful that it's also being used to cover the Russian armaments. Sorry, not armaments, but Russian armored vehicles. Because, hey, if it works, it works. Yes, the best army, ladies and gentlemen, here to be rugged and crush all of the NATO forces all over the world. Or this is another angle of the same vehicle. So I hope you really enjoy this, because these are the points and reasons that we need to point and laugh at what Russia has become. Not because we need to underestimate what Russia is, but because we need to get the message across that Russia is not as scary and unbeatable as it is being claimed. Because this is where Russia has been already beaten into semi-pulp. If we do more, if we support Ukraine more, then even this will be considered as the high-tech equipment. Guys, I did it. We did it on stream. We watched the full interview between President Zelensky and Lex Fridman. I'm going to leave a link to the video that we did. I'm not going to publish that video public. It's a 4-hour slog of me playing a drinking game where I am drinking every time Lex is shilling for Russia. It sounds fun. It sounded actually more fun than it actually was. So the interview, Lex, I can say Lex is not a very good journalist or interviewer. At least he showed to be very, I don't know how to say, like either poorly educated or just not thoughtful through enough in his questions. But the interview itself was surprisingly good. Not the questions, not Lex, but President Zelensky. I think the fact that President Zelensky, and maybe this is where I kind of give Lex a little bit of a, so to say, gratitude, is that President Zelensky had finally the ability to talk basically with simple in simple ways to simple people. We've seen a lot of President Zelensky in his official state and his speaker giving speeches on all of the official houses, but I think a lot of people, especially people that don't follow his speeches in Ukrainian, they haven't really interacted with him as a person. And I believe that this interview right over here showed more of Vova, so to say, instead of President Zelensky. And that was amazing. I think when he explains his positions extremely clearly, he's a great communicator. He's very patient. It's a joy to watch. So if you really want to listen through it, I would say, yeah, for sure. Just be careful about the parts with Lex and just let it slide. I think President Zelensky did an amazing job here, and I think he should do more. I think he should appear more, and we need to see more of his like normal person, like Vova type of interviews. And also to some people of the American audience that are either sympathetic to Russia or for some reason. Guys, new evidence have appeared. The Russia that you like apparently so much in Afghanistan was paying bounties, putting bounties on the heads of the American troops. So the country that you want to essentially be in peace or negotiations or some kind of talks with, and let's do some kind of peace deal, literally paid money to kill your guys. And then I want to return to this story that I covered just recently with a Taiwanese company reportedly supplying components of the glide bombs to Russia. And here I must apologize. I must apologize to the Taiwanese people and the company in question. Because as it turned out, the Taiwanese company, it's actually not a Taiwanese company at all. It's actually a Chinese company. More importantly, it's a sanctioned Chinese company. It's a company that has been circumventing sanctions and just trying to operate under the table. They are selling Chinese components to the Russians so they can create bombs. So this is not Taiwan that is helping Russia getting the glide bombs. No, it's the Chinese companies, the mainland China companies that were pretending to be Taiwanese companies and circumventing the ways that they can sell the components to Russians. So again, huge sorry to the people of Taiwan. I didn't do my due diligence with this. I hope you will forgive and keep supporting Ukraine. And the best way to support Ukraine is participate in our fundraiser that we're still doing. We're almost at 90,000, our 9th truck that will be going to Ukrainian armed forces. Guys, if you can do this, if you can participate, my thank you to you. And I love you. Trust in Ukrainian armed forces, and I will see you next time.